Hello everyone, and welcome to Fleet's Catch-Up Ramblings number 2. You probably thought I'd forgotten, but look, I had a very long day at work, and I needed to have my 2-hour power nap and then have some dinner. But I'm here now, and we're going to work through the Catch-Up Ramblings questions as best we can. Forgotten, but look, I had a very... There I am, just getting the thing set up for the Patreon supporters. Right, there we go. And there we go. And marvelous. That is done and done. Thank goodness. There we are. Okay, that's fantastic. Hello, Stephen Mayer. Nice to see you. Once again, reminder for everybody: this is the catch-up ramblings. So we are not taking questions. I am just plowing through as many ramblings questions as I can. Actually, I haven't even started the stage in the dry dock yet, better do that. There we go. Excellent. Well, dear. I don't know what came over me today. Ugh. I mean, good lord, you can't. Ugh. Bloody hell. Ugh, my throat. Anyway. So, where did I get to on the list? Where did I get to on the list? Where were we? Where did I get to on the list? So I think we were into... Yep, answered. So I got through... So Ramblings... Ah! Here we are! Ramblings 47. That's where we got to. Ah, yes, so... can the Pohana class be called cruisers? Let me see, what are the Pohana class? No, they are corvettes. They are modern general-purpose corvettes built for the Finnish Navy. They're not cruisers, they're corvettes. General-service corvettes, mind you, but... corvettes nonetheless. Not cruisers. Okay. Second question: Do you think we'll ever get a Star Trek Koi 4 mod? No, I don't. It just fundamentally doesn't really work. What would be our ideal starship in, say, the 2070s? Not really that big of a Trekkie, if I'm honest, but 2270s? Honestly, I'd go for the biggest and the best. Give me an Excelsior. What if the Soviet Union managed to successfully join the Allies prior to World War II happening and sent some forces over to France while sending the bulk of the Red Army into Poland at the beginning of the German invasion? Well, assuming this alliance holds, then assuming the Russians don't try to do anything stupid when they're in Poland or France, Germany's just dead. Because the only thing the Polish army needs to turn the tide is mass. And the Red Army is going to provide that, where the Poles can go on the offensive. With their own very capable mobile forces. The Germans aren't the only ones with motorized divisions with armor attached to them, no sir. Basically, Germany dies in 1939-40. And it will be remembered as the war of German aggression or something like that. The Second World War will be the knockdown, drag-out fight between the Russians and the West. Whenever that happens. What would be the ideal number of dreadnoughts for China in the late 30s? None. China physically cannot maintain or operate them. you would need a China so radically different that it would fundamentally change the way in which the geopolitical world is shaped, and then that would change how many dreadnoughts it needs. But that's about it. What if the UNSC successfully defended Reach? They basically can't, and if they do, congratulations, you defended Reach one time. Oh look, there's another Covenant fleet. Basically is the answer to that question. Yes, Sidious, we are doing Hoy. I've just got to do at least half an hour to an hour of this, because I promised I would try and work through catch-up questions once a week on a Friday until I got through them. How would a small empire, let's say 10 star systems, fare in Star Wars if they use far more integrated systems as the Galactic Empire does? You're basically talking about the Hapes. The Hapes are so well defended and dug in, so compact. The Empire basically leaves them alone as it's more trouble than it's worth to try and invade them, basically. But I can't really answer that without knowing the rest of the state of the galaxy at the time. Bear in mind, you are getting me at my off-kilterist. I'm very, very tired. I've had a long week. Brain not quite functioning at optimal levels. There's a reason why Ramblings is normally on a Monday. This is probably going to be a short, sharp one for half an hour today, just because I'm really not in the best state. What if the AM-120s entered service earlier than they did? How much worse for Iraq would Desert Storm air campaign be? You really can't make the Desert Storm air campaign much worse than it already was for the Iraqi Air Force and Air Defense Network. Coalition air power annihilated the Iraqi air defense, integrated air defense, and air force. And annihilated, I mean in the most literal sense. You really can't make it that much worse. It probably doesn't have that much of an effect, to be honest. If the Commonwealth had a joint defence and foreign policy, how would that affect their navies, say 2020? I'm fairly certain I've already answered this one after this, like, later. So it's one of those that's been answered already. If save it up, did that one. Do you think that RAF Tornado ground loss, GR ground loss rate during the Gulf War was due to low altitude bomb mission because RAF's insistence on low altitude missions being more effective, unlike USAF and USN tactics of high altitude precision bombing? Do you think the RAF copied low altitude F-111 missions in Vietnam and said it would be most effective for their Tornado fleet? I have no idea on that one. I am going to put that under come back later. So we've got Guppies. Are we going to use the basis of NSM as a joint NATO missile? I possibly, but I would suggest Googling that one because I probably don't know more than what a Google search could turn up. Are we going to see Russian forces dislodging Ukrainian forces from their captured Kursk area? Well, I'm going to put that as answered basically by saying we'll see what happens. Basically. So then moving through these answered questions. Yeah, answered. Oh wow, got through all those. 49. Answered. Oh, okay, that's a lot.
Did you?
Okay, we got through a lot on that one.
Which one are you referring to?
49. Okay, I did a lot on 49.
49 was 44 had been answered.
Yeah, we did well there. Oh, that's what those numbers are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what the numbers are. I thought it was the date.
No. Oh, right. just for the record, people who are listening, all three of you, or possibly more if there's it on YouTube, Fleet thought stuff like 26/26 was a date.
I am 5 days down from an incredibly physically demanding job, and I am barely functioning right now. Be glad you're getting anything at all. It's only my slavish dedication to this that has led me to do this. I really want to crawl into a corner and go into a ball and not move.
You're not allowed to, Fleet. We need you for that. We need you, believe it or not.
Question 12. What would happen if Karita's force instead sorties through Surigao Strait and goes up against Altendorf's surfing force? In this case, Southern Force heads to the soup. So basically, you're swapping Center Force for Southern Force, basically swapping them round. In that case, then, assuming no changes, Altendorf's in for a bit of a problem. Because, yes, he has 6 of the standards, I believe. But since in Southern Force, no battleships were sunk by air attack, so Fuso and Yamashiro survived. If that happens again, that's Yamato, Musashi, Nagato, Kongo, Haruna, Hiei... Sorry, Kongo and Haruna. That's 6 battleships, including 2 ships that are very much designed for the action they're basically going into, bearing down on him. Plus a much larger escort force of cruisers and destroyers, which will be able to blunt the cruisers and destroyer attack. That's going to be very, very bloody. Because don't forget at this point, Yamato and Musashi have, although it is very basic, they have basic radar fire control for their guns. Very basic. But it's still there. And of course, the Japanese have the excellent night vision to fall back on. And the Yamatos... The Yamatos are functionally immune to 14-inch shell fire for the majority of their vitals and their turrets.
At least at standard battle ranges, yeah.
And this is the fight they were built for. And the thing is, they're not alone either. Nagato's with them, the Kongos are with them. They can't just focus down the 2 Yamatos, which they need to do to not die. So they're going to die. Although, again, it depends. It depends entirely on how the cruiser action goes. It depends. It's one of those things where you'd have to wargame it.
Yeah.
But it could go like the US destroyers, PT boats, and cruisers could blood the new Southern Force enough that the battleships might be able to finish them off, or the Japanese screen forces prevent that happening, and Yamato, Musashi, Nagato, and the Kongos close into action with the standard battle line. In which case, I predict nothing good for the standards, because yes, they've got modern radar fire control. Yes, they're very, very good gunnery ships. But that's 2 intact Yamatos bearing down on them, not including the other battleships. They have 2 choices, both of them bad. They focus fire on the Yamatos and try and put them down, which the Yamatos are designed to basically fight exactly them and resist exactly their guns. But in which case you've left the Nagato and the Kongos unengaged, and Nagato's 16-inch guns absolutely can hurt all of the standards, and the Kongos as a duo can basically hurt the standards as well. Or they don't focus on the Yamatos, and they try and do, one ship engages one ship, etc., like a standard battle. In which case, the Yamatos aren't going to be engaged heavily enough to really impede the normal function of their gunnery, and they're going to start shooting through the standards one at a time with 18.1-inch shells. That's basically...
Also, you might see Fuso or not.
Oh no, 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 no.
Yeah,
This
Fuso
is
or
this,
Yamashiro. No,
this-
let me explain what I mean first for a second. Fuso or Yamashiro, if they've basically been swapped places, they might get sunk by the torpedoes which were going to go after Musashi.
Yeah, it's highly likely that it's highly
Yeah.
likely that the now center force, which is what was the southern force,
Would-
just gets its capital ship complement
They're-
annihilated.
They're having
by...
they're having a worse day than they had
Yeah.
historically.
Yeah, they're having a bad time over there. There is no Taffy 3 moment. There is just a... But there's no Taffy 3. There is... Oh, shit! There is the last great battleship action of the war. Not a whimper like it was historically, but a full-blown, pell-mell, close-in night action. And that's one has been answered, I think, for now. Question 13. Which magazine explosion was more devastating, the Arizona or the Hood? Hoods. Hoods
Yeah, I
was
would say
absolutely more devastating. Yeah.
Arizona blew off the bow, basically, the entire front section of the ship.
Yeah,
But
but
Hood's was catastrophic.
yeah, Hood's magazine explosion basically blew her in two, and she sank so quickly it wasn't even ridiculous. Arizona's magazine, bear in mind, there's not much in it, but it is Hood's. Would the British have built? Would the British have built 10, 25,000 ton battle cruisers instead of the built battle cruiser in 1936?
Oh, right.
The British.
So I think this is referring to an idea the British had of, instead of building bigger battleships, what if we build a lot of smaller battleships? They were around this tonnage as well. So they might have had, say, 16-inch guns or sort of style thing. And
No.
2 triple turrets.
No, they wouldn't have done. The British were looking to. The British were looking to. The problem is it doesn't solve the problem the British have, which is the amount of armor plate and guns they can manufacture.
If anything, it's making it worse because now you've got
Yeah.
10 new ships you need to
Yeah,
work
it doesn't. Yeah, you'd rather have 2 battleships a year of the most capable type you can build. And also, the Royal Navy doesn't need battle cruisers in that moment. It needs fast battleships.
It was an interesting thought experiment. Like, it's why they looked into it.
But they decided quite rightly that it was the wrong choice.
Yeah.
You'll notice Dragon I've put there.
Unanswerable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will read this out. You were in charge of building shipbuilding and acquisition for the US Navy in the present day. What sort of ships do you build? You have $1 trillion to spend. The amount of work I would have to put in to answer that question accurately, I would have
That's
to go...
a full ramblings.
Yeah, I would have
with
to...
help.
And I know this is going to sound harsh, but modern US Navy procurement does not interest me in the slightest. I lack the passion to go away and do that digging. I'm sorry. It's just not something that really interests me.
It's also one I'm not too familiar with. I would have normally said probably do what they're currently doing.
Yeah,
From discussions with Cyclic, probably not quite.
Yeah, like
Because-
you'd need Cyclic and Phoenix here to answer that one
Yeah.
sorry, to answer that one basically. To answer that one properly is basically an entire video essay.
An interesting idea, but not quite rambling scope currently.
Thoughts on the Skysaber land-based SAM? Do you think it has better capabilities than the Patriot Pack 3 MSE? Well, first things first, I've heard of Patriot, but I've only just recently heard of Skysaber. It appears to be a SAM system. It appears to be in British service. It's a weapon system. In fact, it's a very modern weapon system. So therefore, its capabilities are going to be very much unknown. Yes, there are Wikipedia articles and published databases, but we all know those are absolute bullshit and are not the actual capabilities of the system. Because that's what very good, competent militaries do. They don't tell you exactly what their systems do, they tell you what they want you to hear. In regards to whether it's better than Patriot, I don't know enough about the capabilities of both systems to answer that question, because we don't know what their actual capabilities are. And I think it will take an actual war or another decade and another few decades of history. Ask me that when I'm 50 and their capabilities are old news when we've all got lasers and railguns fighting the intelligent machine uprising. Yeah. Question: if all the South American navies combined at the height of their power, is there a naval fleet this could actually challenge? Well, here's the thing.
Yes, actually.
Well, no. Here's the thing.
Yeah. Go on.
There is no one height of their power, because it waxes and wanes across. Like, some people argue it's when the dreadnoughts come in. I'd say yes, that's true, but then you've got the point when the Brazilians had battleships in the Atlantic and the Americans didn't. Is that the height of their power, or is it when they got their light fleet carriers from the various navies? Is it when they acquired the cruisers in the post-war period? Is it when they acquired more modern carriers in form the Brazilians did? Is it when they acquired modern This is the problem.
I'll throw my hat in with at least one time. I think basically just after the South American dreadnought race, when they've actually got their ships and got the other bits with it, not just the dreadnoughts, I think they could have at least gave Austria-Hungary a decent challenge.
Basically, Austria-Hungary, Italy, Spain. Japan.
Italy,
honestly.
maybe not so much.
Japan.
And Japan, depending on when.
Yeah. No. No, Italy, they absolutely could. They'd have 5 dreadnoughts, one of which has 14-inch guns. Yeah, and a good service fleet to go with it. Yeah, they absolutely could give the Italians a run for their money.
Spain's not really a naval power at this point.
They've got
as much as
no, they're rebuilding, but then
yeah.
Spain's rebuilding. The Hispanias were only meant to be a first step, but then there was the post-war crash and the Spanish flu that basically crippled the.
Well, and then the minor problem of the Civil War.
Oh no! The Civil War's 20 years after that point. That's the thing. The thing is, Spanish naval expansionism went through spurts. So there was the spurt during and just after the First World War, which was paid for, ironically enough, by the First World War, because everyone was buying goods from Spain in large numbers. And then when that dies off, you see the Spanish cancel their larger battleships and curb down the second tranche of their light cruisers they build. Then you see it pick up again in the 20s and in the 30s. But then, of course, Civil War happens again.
Honestly, I actually think the Regina Victoria is probably going to be quite a nice ship to see.
Yeah, they would have been, actually. They would have been they would have been small but fairly punchy battleships.
21,000 tons, 8 13.5-inch guns, 21 knots. Honestly, for what they needed, not the worst.
It basically means you can't show up with a 12-inch dreadnought.
Yeah. Spain at least gave it a go, and they kept commissioning naval designs off many other nations throughout this period.
Yeah. Is it true that the global war on terror, the Vietnam War, which largely consisted of coin operations, really held back U.S. future weapons development? Well, okay, I have to put a clarification there. The Vietnam War did not largely consist of counterinsurgency operations, because the insurgency they were fighting was about was the least insurgency of all time. It was about the closest thing to a full-scale conventional war the U.S. has fought, apart as in with a side that was actually giving them a decent run for their money, since Korea. Yes, there was some coin elements in it, but not really. So the Vietnam War really didn't slow down U.S. future weapons development, but the global war on terror did, though not for the reasons you think. Just because of lack of funding. The global war on terror coincided with a peace dividend, and that basically curtailed a lot of funding for future weapons development. But as we're seeing great power competition rear its head again, now that we're in the 2020s, you're seeing funding become available. Um, which do you prefer? London North Eastern Railway, London Midland Scottish Railway, Great Western Railway, or Southern Railway? Southern Railway, obviously.
Great Northeastern Railway.
The GNER. You can't say the GNER. Go away. Go away.
If I'm actually being serious, LNER.
Oh bloody
But
hell!
I actually did quite like.
Oh bloody hell!
GNER.
This is 50. Christ on a bike.
Yeah.
Actually, and I this can't be a long one because I cannot. I can't keep going. Like Fleet Brain not work funny. Who are you people? What go on?
Yes, Sea Dotters. Yes, GNER. I loved its livery scheme.
Fleet no work. And besides, Fleet Brain really want to go.
We'll shove more coal. We'll shove more coal in the firebox then.
Yeah, Fleet.
I'm going to talk a bit about the Vietnam War because I wanted to look at question 15 a bit more. GWAT.
Yeah, you're being hijacked, Fleet. End of.
No, I'm sorry,
GWAT was not entirely largely coin ops because people forget that GWAT also coincided with things like the Gulf War, which was funny. Both Desert Storms and Desert Thunder, etc. Near peer-to-peer operations, largely weighted in the US's favor because air power is king, which you also then see in Vietnam. Funnily enough, a lot of modern-day coin tactics and strategies were actually first developed in Vietnam. It's part of the reason that the big thing about going into GWAT in Afghanistan, Iraq, or post-coalition coup Iraq, was hearts and minds in winning over the local populace because it's a lot easier to have them cooperate with you when you aren't actively going around burning their villages and against an enemy that isn't actively trying to kidnap people and forcing them into fighting for their side, both of which happened during GWAT and Vietnam. On every side, frankly. The only reason that the future weapons development actually proceeded pretty on track for the Vietnam.
Because it was in the middle of the fucking Cold War and the Soviet Union's right fucking there.
Yeah. There was always a fear that the Soviets were going to get involved in Vietnam, just as the way that the Chinese got involved in Korea. They never really did, at least not directly. The Soviet Union and China were still completely bypassing the blockades to run oil via ship to North Vietnam. They then started doing that over land because, good lord, if you haven't read up on the Battle of Dien Bien Phu, Jesus Christ, one of the greatest logistical quandaries of the 21st century, right? Or the 21st century, right there. No, 20th. I can't do numbers today, apparently. Greatest logistical quandary of the 20th century right there, and a force somewhere in the region of 10 times the size of the French force at the outpost at Dien Bien Phu, was held off by the French for, 3 weeks or something? A long time. The North Vietnamese managed to squirrel in artillery guns, anti-aircraft batteries, mortar batteries, logistical trains and supply hubs for food, water, munitions in the hills around the outpost without the French noticing from both the ground and air.
Yeah, it was when those artillery guns started firing from the hills that the French commander realised, shit.
Which was the opening salvo for a lot of the big attacks. Now, the best way that the North Vietnamese were able to actually aggress the outpost was soften up with artillery for 5 days, then do a ground charge, get pushed back, and then continue bombarding it with artillery. This is also where things like CIA-aligned aircraft were ferrying supplies in without Congress knowing, or sometimes the president, because the OSS and the CIA were doing things. I bring up the OSS because one of the big early casualties of the Vietnamese war with the French in Indochina was the single OSS American commander who was actually there trying to get both sides to cooperate alongside a very ineffective British contingent was accidentally killed by the Vietnamese because Vietnamese guerrillas mistook him for a French officer and killed him. Which Ho Chi Minh personally wrote a letter to President Truman apologizing for that. So yeah, but digressing, future weapons tech development only really pauses in the in like GWAT long enough because again, tail end of what is essentially a military drawdown and defense cuts across NATO nations coinciding with the end of the Cold War. Doesn't really pick up during the Gulf Wars either because Lamau stocks were fine, and the only thing that they spent money on was replacing those stocks. It had a great impact on civilian markets for things. Fun fact, the reason that Samantha Carter makes use of a cut down M16 in Stargate SG-1 is because P90 ammo was super rare because of the Gulf War. Because the P90 was one of the favored personal defense weapons for rear line units and in-ground vehicle crews because of its ergonomics. So they had to cut down on their expenditure of blank rounds, and so they had to make use of 5.56 ammo, which is much more plentiful than the 5.7 ammo, or the 4.7 ammo rather. Weapons development only really picks up in the 2010s, around then, for things like future conflicts with Russia and China, which are once again on the rise in that time. 2010 is roughly the time where China starts making actual inroads in doing its major modernization programs across the board for military stuff, which is where most of NATO should have gotten on the idea of, okay, they're gearing up for something. This may be the restart of the Chinese Civil War. This may be settling old scores with Korea and Japan. Maybe settling old scores with Vietnam. Fun fact, the Chinese were pushed back during the Korean invasion by US troops. They were not pushed back in the Vietnamese invasion by US troops because the US troops had left. The Vietnamese kicked the shit out of the Chinese.
Yeah, the Chinese...
When China invaded communist Vietnam in 1975, 1976.
And
it was just after the war because the Vietnamese were drawn into a fight with the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia.
Yeah.
Because but Cambodia and Vietnam have always been... If you want to look at a very quick, not quite on the money, but close enough example of what it was like, imagine if Lancashire and Yorkshire in the modern day just suddenly started fighting again because of the War of the Roses.
Yeah, like
Cambodia and Vietnam have kind of always been at odds with one another. And
but I will point out,
Vietnam
honestly,
won,
that would probably be kind of amusing to see.
When Vietnam kicked the Americans out and was now unified again, the Khmer Rouge, which was propped up by the Chinese state and Mao Zedong, were genuinely convinced, whilst Phnom Penh was being evacuated and they were doing the long marches and went to year zero and all the Khmer Rouge bullshit, they were genuinely convinced that communist Vietnam under Ho Chi Minh and his later successors would attempt to incorporate Cambodia into a Vietnamese superstate. So they tried doing things like sending death squads across the border to subtly hint to the Vietnamese, we don't want you near us, which the Vietnamese were like, what the fuck, we're all communist here, let's get along. And the Khmer Rouge just didn't pay attention and then kept doing it, so the Vietnamese invaded to get them to fucking stop.
Which ironically was a really good thing because the Khmer Rouge...
Which was a good thing because it uncovered the Cambodian genocide, prevented it from happening any further, and because they had effectively deposed the Khmer Rouge, the Chinese were really upset and were like, all right, we need to teach Vietnam a lesson. Went across the border, failed in every pitched battle they met, declared they'd won and went home.
Because they were trying to fight Vietnam that had literally just slapped the United States of America in the face, and China doesn't have anything like the air power. It's like...
So, it's because part of the reason for that was, again, China went into it the same way that America went into Vietnam initially, expecting it to be a very pitched battles between evenly matched units. Instead, one of the things that the Vietnamese had gotten arguably the best in the world at that point, had gotten very good at waging guerrilla warfare across their entire territory. But but yes, it was. It was a time. So
I can only
Yes,
to finish
but,
off the question, yesn't.
yes, basically.
I can only assume
Right.
Wellesley that's a bit of a joke because I don't think if Britain was in, we would have won. No, I don't think we would have.
No.
Britain was involved in the early French Indochina War between what was effectively an independent Vietnam and post-war France's attempt to reclaim its colonies. And we were only there as a peacekeeping element, provided that like the French would actually respect the agreements between the British, the French, the Vietnamese, and the Americans. And the French were like, no.
So we left.
And at a certain point, it became clear that the communists were going to win. So America stepped up its contributions to the French.
And
The
we
French
left.
didn't want to be involved anymore, so the Americans took over.
Yeah.
Mostly under Nixon and McNamara's policies of containment to prevent the further spread of communists through Southeast Asia, which ultimately failed.
And
Well, sort of, because it didn't go any further than like Cambodia, Vietnam, and whatnot.
yeah.
It's happened in Malaya. I think Malaya's the only revolution that failed, isn't it?
Yes, because
kind
we
of.
were there. Because we were there. And the thing is, we actually did it right. We realised that we weren't there to try and prop up a government. We were there to establish a democracy. So we literally went around trying to establish a working government and working with the local populace rather than just shooting them.
I mean, yesn't. We did do plenty of shooting of the Malay people during the Malayan emergency.
Yes, but usually they were Malay people with guns shooting back at us. There wasn't quite the same level of napalm the jungle, because we can.
Well, so, again, like, not exactly comparable either. We went into Malaya in part because at that time Malaya was effectively a British possession.
Did we succeed in establishing a stable Malayan government? Answer, yes, therefore we win.
No, not exactly.
Was it that stable?
Not exactly.
It didn't collapse into... It didn't collapse
It
into
didn't-
communist revolution.
And it didn't pull a Burma.
No,
or
but
Myanmar.
again, like the Americans didn't go in there with
Yeah.
the same intentions that we went in. The Americans went in there to try to prevent initially to prevent the French from fucking up yet again. It later developed into something completely different for reasons of McCarthyism and capitalist versus communist ideological clashing.
Yes.
And again, like I'm also going to point out, prior to the end of the war, Ho Chi Minh was endeavoring as much as possible to meet with both President Johnson and Truman to get their support, literally calling upon like fellow anti-colonial sentiment in helping to establish a free and independent nation. He didn't get that from America, so went to the communists instead, because he was a communist. He wanted to work with America as much as possible, in part because the whole like we don't want to be a European colonial possession anymore. Are you going to help us with this because you had a successful one? Yeah, they were there because of other reasons, though. They weren't there for like the same reasons that the Americans went in. That's a non sequitur, mate. I don't know why you're bringing up the Australians and the New Zealanders.
Yeah, didn't Ho Chi
Right.
Minh
Can we wrap this
really
up,
disagree-
please? I need
agree with
to...
the Soviets? He was a communist and he was anti-Soviet.
It's funny you mention the South Koreans, because fun fact, the South Koreans did more war crimes in Vietnam than the Americans did.
Can we...
I love how desperate Fleet is trying to please
Please,
let
just-
me sleep.
Oh, I don't want to sleep.
Let me
I
boy.
want to go do something else. Fleet needs his relaxation. I've been on the job.
I'm only
all
going to be
day.
here for 45 minutes because
No! I can't have 45 more minutes of this.
You
Why
can go,
not?
bye.
There's plenty of questions, Fleet.
Oh, all right. Hang on 1 second. Let me just. Where is it? 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 Hang on. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Hang on. There we go. Hang on 1 second. Yeah. Hit. Hit. Hit.
Mostly his weekly Hoy dress
Yeah.
is probably going to be tomorrow.
Hit. Well, there will be a Hoy game right now. Hang on. Hit. 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 There we go. All right. Bye. Sorry, folks. Fleet needs to keel over and die because I am absolutely knackered. Take care.